I always knew my family played favorites, but I never realized I had been fully replaced. I'm 29 now, and I've been estranged from my mom and younger sister for almost 6 years. It wasn't dramatic, at least not at first. I just slowly stopped being invited to things. At first it was little stuff, a cousin's birthday, some random barbecue. I'd get a vague excuse like, "Oh, we didn't think you'd be in town," even though I lived 15 minutes away. Then it escalated. Holidays without an invite. No calls on my birthday. Eventually, I stopped reaching out because I got tired of feeling like I was bothering them. My dad and I stayed in touch. We weren't super close, but he was always steady. When I was a kid, he was the only one who treated me like I mattered. Not the golden child, just his daughter. We'd meet for lunch now and then, or he'd call me randomly to check in. Nothing deep, but enough to remind me I wasn't completely forgotten. Then he got sick. He called me himself, said it was aggressive, and they didn't think he had more than a few months. I asked if Mom and my sister knew. He said yes, but their reactions had been strange. No tears, no panic. Just cold logistics about funeral planning and wills. That was 3 months ago. Last week, he passed away. I wasn't there. I didn't know he'd taken a turn until a mutual friend texted me condolences. I was shocked. My own mother hadn't even told me he was gone. I found out about my dad's funeral from Facebook. An acquaintance tagged me in a comment like, "So sorry about your dad. I saw the service details." That was the first I'd heard of it. No call, no message. I debated whether to go. Part of me felt like I didn't belong anymore, like I wasn't even part of the family. But in the end, I showed up. I wore black, stood in the back, and told myself I had a right to be there. He was my dad. I wasn't ready for what happened next. The moment I walked into the chapel, I knew something was off. There were photos everywhere. A big collage near the entrance, slideshows on a screen, even printed programs with childhood pictures. But in every single one, it was my sister. My mom, my sister, and my dad in every frame. Vacations, birthdays, graduations. Photos that I knew I was there for, except I wasn't in a single one. It was like someone had cut me out of my own life. At first I thought maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe someone else had chosen the photos and just picked what was easiest. But then I saw the yearbook photos, my senior year, except my sister's picture was there instead. She was 2 years younger. They had swapped mine out. And then I heard someone say it. A woman behind me leaned over to the man next to her and said, "I didn't know Tom only had one daughter. I could have sworn he had two." I turned around and asked who she was. Turns out, she used to work with my dad, a colleague. They'd had lunch together regularly for years. She was kind, soft-spoken, and looked genuinely confused. She said, "I thought he had 2 daughters, but everyone today keeps saying Jenna's his only child." Jenna, my sister. I stared at her. I didn't know what to say. I felt like I was being gaslit at my own father's funeral. I stepped outside to catch my breath. That's when I saw the guest list printed on a small board by the entrance. Survived by his wife, Carol, and beloved daughter, Jenna. No mention of me, not even my name. I had to read it twice. My knees buckled a little. I just stood there, staring at the words like they might rearrange themselves if I blinked hard enough. But they didn't. And in that moment, it became painfully clear. My mom had erased me. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally. She had rewritten our family to make it look like I never existed. And I was about to find out just how far she'd gone. I left the chapel and sat in my car for almost an hour. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in shock, staring out the windshield at people hugging and laughing, like they hadn't just buried the only person who ever gave a damn about me. I felt like a ghost, like I was watching a version of reality that had quietly cut me out years ago, and I was only now noticing. What hurt the most was how normal they all looked. My mother, dressed in perfect mourning black, was talking to guests like she hadn't just excluded her oldest daughter from her own husband's obituary. My sister, no, Jenna, was standing next to her, greeting people like she was the sole heir to the family name. Like she hadn't stolen my spot and settled into it like it always belonged to her. And the worst part? No one seemed surprised I wasn't mentioned. Not one person came up to me. not even to ask who I was. I could have left. I almost did. But something told me I needed to go back in. Not for them, for him. My dad. I needed to sit through that service and say goodbye, even if no one else acknowledged me. So I went back in, took a seat in the far back row, and waited. The slideshow kept playing on a loop. Same photos, same people. Then the officiant got up and started talking. Nice words, mostly generic stuff. Nothing too personal. Then my mother took the mic. She started by thanking everyone for coming. Then she talked about what a devoted father my dad was. How he always made time for his little girl. How Jenna had been the light of his life. I sat there frozen, gripping the edge of the pew so hard my knuckles turned white. She wasn't talking about me. Not once. Not a single acknowledgement that another daughter even existed. And then she said it. I know Tom would be proud of the young woman Jenna's become, the only child we were blessed to raise. The only child. I almost walked out right then. But I didn't, because I wasn't done yet. When the service ended, I stayed in my seat until the room started to clear. I kept thinking maybe someone, anyone, would recognize me. Maybe a relative, a neighbor, an old family friend. But no one did. Or worse. Maybe they did recognize me and just chose to pretend otherwise. Eventually, I stood up and walked to the front of the room where my dad's urn sat, surrounded by flowers. There was a photo of him smiling in his favorite fishing hat, the same one he wore on all our lake trips when I was a kid. A version of him I actually remembered. I whispered something, I don't even know what, and turned around. That's when Jenna saw me. She froze mid-conversation, blinking like she couldn't believe I had the nerve to show up. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. I just looked at her and waited. She approached slowly, wearing that same wide-eyed, innocent look she'd mastered since she was a teenager. She asked what I was doing there. I told her I came to say goodbye to my dad. And then she said it, flatly, like it was a fact and not a bomb she was dropping. He didn't want you here. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd I couldn't help myself. I told her he called me when he got diagnosed. He told me everything, that he loved me, that he didn't understand what happened between Mom and me, only that things had gotten weird, and he didn't know how to fix it. Her face twitched, just for a second. That's when I realized something. She didn't know that he had called me. I asked her how she managed to delete an entire human being from a funeral. She didn't answer. She just looked away and said, "You left. We didn't think you'd come." That's when it hit me. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd replaced me. I walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. My hands were shaking, not from anger, from something worse. Disbelief. Grief. That bone-deep kind of sadness that doesn't make a sound, just folds you in half like your body's trying to disappear. Back in my car, I sat with the engine off, heart pounding. I needed to know the truth. I didn't want to just feel like they replaced me. I wanted to see it. So I started scrolling through Jenna's social media. I hadn't looked in years. I'd blocked her on everything back when things went cold, back when it was still unclear who had done what. But now I had context. She had dozens of posts about her incredible father. Photos of the two of them together. Some recent, some old. One in particular caught my eye. A birthday photo from when I turned 14. I remember that party. It was at our backyard pool. I was in the original photo, right next to my dad, holding the cake. In Jenna's post, I wasn't there. It was cropped. Not just casually, surgically. My whole body was edited out. I kept scrolling. Another family trip, one I couldn't possibly forget because I got food poisoning and spent 2 days in a hotel room. In Jenna's version, the caption read, "Best family vacation ever, just the 3 of us." I knew right then that this wasn't a misunderstanding or oversight. It wasn't about me drifting away or not being around. It was deliberate. They had rewritten the story of our family and erased me from it. And Jenna was the new only daughter, the new me, and my mom. She was in on it, maybe even the one who started it. But I still didn't know why. What could I have possibly done to make my own mother cut me out like this? I was finally ready to find out. The next morning, I drove to my childhood home. I hadn't been there in years. Not since the last Thanksgiving I was invited to. The one where my mother gave Jenna my seat at the table and introduced me to relatives I'd known since birth like I was a plus one. I wasn't sure what I expected pulling into the driveway. A confrontation? An apology? Maybe just a locked door and silence. But she answered. She looked older, smaller, almost, but her expression didn't soften. No surprise, no warmth, just that same tight-lipped neutrality I'd grown up with. The kind she used when she wanted to look composed while cutting you in half. She asked what I wanted. I told her I had questions, real ones, and I wanted answers, not vague dismissals or passive-aggressive guilt trips. She didn't invite me in. She just stepped outside and closed the door behind her like she didn't want her precious curated life disturbed by my presence. I asked her why she erased me, why I wasn't listed in the obituary, why the funeral made it seem like I'd never existed. She sighed. Not sad, annoyed. And then she said it. You made your choice a long time ago. I blinked. My choice? She said I was always difficult, that I had too many feelings, that I questioned things too much. I wasn't easy, like Jenna. I didn't go with the flow. I argued when something didn't feel right. I made her look bad at church when I refused to wear dresses. I embarrassed her when I cried during family events or called her out in front of guests. You always had to be the center of attention, she said. You always made things harder than they needed to be. And just like that, I realized, it wasn't about something I did. It was about who I was. She didn't want a daughter. She wanted a mirror. And I stopped reflecting her a long time ago. I stood there, stunned. Not because she said it, but because of how easily she said it. Like it was all so obvious. Like I should have known this whole time that my crime was simply being me. And then she hit me with the final blow. She said, Jenna made the effort. She stayed. She never made us feel like we were walking on eggshells. She knew how to be grateful. Grateful. That word landed like a slap. I was supposed to be grateful for being tolerated, for being squeezed into a mold I never fit into, for being compared to a sister who never challenged anything, never questioned, never pushed back. I asked her, point blank, if she loved me at all. She didn't answer right away. She looked past me, like she was calculating how much she could say without making herself the villain. Then she said, I loved the version of you that used to try. Try to be quieter, more polite, smaller, easier. Try to be like Jenna. I felt something in me crack open. Not break, not fully, but shift. Because in that moment, I realized I'd spent most of my life trying to earn love from someone who only ever wanted to control me. I thought about the birthdays she'd forgotten, the holidays she stopped inviting me to, the way she used silence as punishment. I thought about how she let my sister post old memories with me cropped out, and how she stood next to that guest list like it wasn't missing a name. My name? And I knew I wasn't going to get the apology I wanted, because she didn't think she did anything wrong. To her, I was the one who left. Not physically, emotionally. I stopped performing. I stopped pleasing. I stopped asking, how high, when she said jump. And for that, I was erased. So I looked her in the eye and said, the only thing I had left. Thank you. Her face twisted in confusion. I told her I was thankful. Not for what she did, but for finally showing me exactly who she was. Because now, there was no going back. And I could finally stop pretending that somewhere deep down, she might love me again. She never did. Not really. And now I was free. I drove away without looking back. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like a bad daughter, or broken, or dramatic, or too emotional. I just felt done. Grief is weird. You think it hits hardest when someone dies, but sometimes it shows up long after, when you realize someone who's still alive has been gone from your life for years. My mother? She didn't lose me at that funeral. She lost me the moment she decided love should be conditional. As for Jenna, I don't know if she truly understands what she did. Whether she played along to keep the peace, or whether she enjoyed the spotlight, I may never know. But I do know this. She let them pretend I didn't exist. And that silence, that compliance, was louder than anything she could have said. I still miss my dad. I always will. But in some strange way, I think he knew. Maybe not all the details, but enough. I remember the way he hesitated when he talked about Mom in those final months. How he sounded tired, like someone who'd spent years watching a train derail in slow motion and couldn't stop it. He told me once, near the end, "You were always the strong one, even when it didn't feel like it." I think about that a lot now. It took years of being left out, cut off, and rewritten to finally understand that strength isn't loud. It's not a dramatic confrontation or a perfect comeback. Sometimes strength is walking away from a place you used to call home and deciding to build something better for yourself, even if you have to start from nothing. So that's what I'm doing now. Starting over. I've reached out to friends I lost touch with. I've signed up for a class I've always wanted to take. I even started journaling again, writing about things I care about. Not to perform, not to prove, just to feel. I don't need a mother who only loves the version of me she can control. I don't need a sister who thrives in my absence. And I sure as hell don't need to attend a funeral where I have to prove I belong. Because I do belong. Just not there. If you've ever felt erased by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, let me tell you something no one ever told me. You are not the problem. You never were. Sometimes families don't break. They were already broken. We just finally opened our eyes. And when I did, I chose myself. And I don't regret it. Not for a second.